the future's alive. Grab your coffee, let's take a ride. It's wealth and wisdom, time will rise. Author, Mr. Educator, team sharing the wealth, building things you should do. From trust to banking, it's all of us. Your guide to wealth is learning to trust. Legacy matters, secure it right. Dreams take shape with effort and sight. Wills and assets, life insurance plans, building for your future with expert hands. So talks money and more, building wealth with knowledge galore. Asset protection plans to grow, to read and watch your dreams overflow. From saving today to trust for life, breaking generational wealth divides. Healthcare directives, banking tips, we're here to help your fortune eclipse. From saving today to trust for life, breaking generational wealth divides. Healthcare directives, banking tips, we're here to help your fortune eclipse. And now it's time to learn, so wisdom's your return. Invest, protect, and thrive for sure. Signing off is Soul Talks Money and More.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Soul Talks Money and More, where we are always educating, enlightening, informing, and empowering our community. I am your host, Dr. Sabrina Edmon Williams, educator, author, and investor, opening minds and closing contracts. I am so noted, and I am so excited and so delighted to be here this morning. Now, I got to tell you, you guys, I am not necessarily feeling my best, but I am here today because I got something to say, and you need to hear what I have to say. So we're going to press through this thing. I need to welcome. Got to start the show off welcoming my faithful listeners on WMPR 90.1 FM right here in Jackson, Mississippi. And to everyone that's watching me on YouTube and Facebook. Now, Kelly has already checked in, and they are 2 hours behind us. So by my calculation, it's about 5 a.m. on the West Coast. So all the rest of y'all folks don't have no excuse. Come on in the room. Before we get started, I need you to go ahead, call somebody, text somebody, at least one friend, and tell them to tune in, wake up, get up, and join this conversation, because today we are having a very important conversation. I'm calling this the call to action to our community, the conversation that we desperately need to have, and we need to hear this conversation. Now, with the recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling that has significantly weakened the protections of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, there has been renewed conversation and a fresh wave of mobilization efforts across the Black community. Organizations are sounding the alarm. Churches are encouraging civic engagement. Community leaders are urging us to pay attention. But amid all of the discussion, one question really is troubling me this morning. And I have to be honest, I am concerned about what are we really doing here? What good is mobilization if the people who are already registered to vote still do not show up at the ballot box? Mr. Armstrong, I'm concerned. Now, our ancestors have endured a lot for us to have this thing called the right, the privilege to vote. They endured beatings, jailing, and even death in many instances. Yet today, many of us have the freedom to vote and choose not to use it. Now, I know that is your own, your right to do so. I get it. But this morning, I'm asking a very difficult question, but it's necessary. Have we become so disillusioned that we no longer recognize the power of our own vote? And if those who sacrificed so much could speak to us today, what would they say about the way we treat one of the most powerful tools that we possess? Now, I want to go ahead and put this out there. This is not a conversation regarding party loyalty. I'm not trying to tell anybody who to vote for. That's your business. That is not what this is about. This conversation is about understanding that our vote is our voice, our power, and our responsibility. Now, I know some of you may be wondering, where is this coming from? Now, I'm going to be honest. I recently made a post on social media just encouraging civic engagement, encouraging our community to move beyond voter registration and focus more on voter participation. Because honestly, registering to vote is only one step. Registering to vote, that's just one step. Now, what got me, I received a message, a direct message from a good friend apologizing to me for the rudeness of someone, and I had no clue what she was talking about. Apparently, someone went on my page and commented something that was anything but encouraging. And in fact, their messaging, I didn't even respond to the message because it was so concerning for me. The person basically said, your vote doesn't count. I don't care anything about that. Now, I could have simply read it and dismissed the comment, but it really gave me cause to pause and ask a question. If that one person feels that way, how many others out there feel the exact same way? And if enough people believe their vote doesn't matter, could that explain why voter turnout is often so low? Could that really explain what's going on? Because I really don't understand it, you guys. Now, there is, again, a difference between being registered and being engaged. Let me give you some simple examples in case you're not understanding what I'm talking about this morning. You can have a gym membership and never work out. You can carry a library card and never read a book. I'm about to step on some toes here. Some folks have church memberships and never attend, and a voter registration card and never vote. Possession without participation produces no results. Somebody needs to hear that this morning. Again, I'm going to say it again for those that are just tuning on in. Come on in, Facebook. I see you. Welcome to the conversation. This morning, we're talking about the cost of apathy in the Black community, voter apathy. Thank you for joining the conversation. Dr. Williams is wondering what is going on this morning. Why are we registering to vote, but yet not participating in the process? Should our focus as a community be shifted to voter education and voter participation as opposed to simply registration? You can't expect change from a ballot that you never cast. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I need to make sure for those of us that may be here in Mississippi and listening, I got to give you a couple of examples of how our vote could change things or didn't change things when we had an opportunity. Could have changed things. How our vote actually, or our lack of participation in one instance, actually determined the outcome. For example, let's bring this home. In the 2025 Jackson mayoral general election, that wasn't that long ago. We don't have to think back. State Senator John Horn won with 16,377 votes. His independent opponent, Johnny DuPree, received 6,736 votes for a total of roughly 24,000 votes cast. Now, you might be wondering, well, Dr. Williams, what's the problem with that? Well, here's the thing. Jackson has well over 100,000 residents and tens of thousands of registered voters. Yet, the next mayor of Mississippi's capital city was effectively chosen by a relatively small share of the population. 24,000 people, okay, for the top two vote getters. Think about that. 24,000 people. Now, there's always a conversation about roads. The roads in Jackson are so bad. Oh, the water situation, water rates are so high. Oh, safety, I don't want to go to Jackson. It's so unsafe. Crime is bad in Jackson. Economic development, there's nothing there. No restaurants to go to, nowhere to go, nothing to do. Property values, you got abandoned buildings everywhere, abandoned homes, burnt out homes. All shaped by decisions made by a small fraction of those eligible to participate. This is what you get when you choose not to participate in the process. Local elections are often decided by the people who simply show up, while other folks sitting at home talking about what's not done and what's wrong and complaining. The people who actually participate in the process are those who are making the decisions. It's costing. It costs. Voter apathy in our community, it's costing us something. And let me give you another example. I'm going to go even deeper on you, but I got to go a little further back for you. Allow me to, if you will, just go here with you. In 2011, Johnny DuPree, who is now Senator Johnny DuPree, State Senator Johnny DuPree, became the first Black major party nominee for governor in the state of Mississippi. Let that sink in. The first Black major party nominee for governor in Mississippi. That was historic, you guys. We had never, as a race of people, achieved that as a community. That was historic. He received 347,658 votes, while his Republican opponent, Phil Bryant, sound familiar? Went on to become governor. He received 544,294 votes. Now, don't get it twisted. This issue was not Black Mississippians not being registered to vote. We were registered. The issue was about voter turnout, voter participation. If more of those folks that were registered to vote had shown up, Mississippi may very well have elected its first Black governor. Now, why does that matter? Why is it significant? And I know there are people out there that's listening and say, well, we shouldn't just vote for folks because they Black and this, that, and the other. I'm not here to have that conversation. I'm not here to have that debate. That is not what this is about this morning. So don't come for me like that. The point is, when we don't participate in the process, we don't have a right to sit back and complain about the outcome of things. History is not always changed by the lack of opportunity. We had an opportunity to elect the first Black major party nominee for governor of the state of Mississippi. We missed that opportunity because we chose to stay at home. We chose not to vote. We chose not to be a part of the process. But we want to always be a part of the complaining about the outcome of things and what we don't have. Think about how history could have been changed if only some of us more of us would have shown up at the polls. Sometimes history is changed by a lack of participation. I want you to think about that. Johnny DuPree didn't lose because we lacked registration. He lost because too many registered folks, registered voters, stayed home. They chose not to vote. And it's always interesting to me when I hear people say, well, I don't know that person. I don't know nothing about that person. Well, guess what? A lot of us don't know nothing about these people that are elected. But our apathy, our choice not to participate in the process does impact election outcomes. Registration is a declaration. Voting is a demonstration. I need to say that again because somebody needs to hear it. Being registered, having that little card, walking around with the little card, voter registration card, that's a declaration. But actually showing up at the polls, that's a demonstration. Again, it's baffling to me and it's hurtful to me, honestly, you guys. While so many of us, my generation, I'm a 70s baby, while we believe that voting does not matter. So we need to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Let's go ahead and address it. A lot of people genuinely believe that their vote doesn't matter. Some say things such as, well, politicians are all the same. It doesn't matter who get in there. They all gonna do the same thing, what they want to do. Nothing's gonna change. It's all gonna stay the same. Well, they already know who's gonna win, so why should I go down there? My one vote won't make a difference. My one vote won't make a difference. And honestly, you guys, I do get it. I understand the frustration. I understand it because there are times when promises are broken, communities are ignored, schools remain underfunded, streets stay unrepaired, water systems fail, crime persists. Does that sound familiar to anybody? There are times when these things happen, but disappointment is not proof that voting is useless. It is proof that voting must be paired with accountability. Voting is not the finish line. It is the starting line. Once you vote, you got to hold these people accountable that you put in office. That's when we have to be in their faces, making our voices heard, making our demands heard, what's important to us. We can't just vote and then think it's over. How are they going to know that it matters to you whether these streets are in disrepair, whether the water rates are astronomical and our senior citizens cannot afford to pay a $1,000 water bill? How are they going to know when we have issues with the lack of public safety if we don't make our voices heard? Voting is not the finish line. It is the starting line. When you vote, you earn the right to demand answers. When you don't vote, you surrender your influence. If you don't show up, someone else decides how I want you to listen to me, how your tax dollars are spent. Someone else gets to decide that. Who appoints judges? Who controls school boards? Who draws redistricting lines and maps? Who shapes laws that affect your life? Someone else gets to decide that when you don't show up. Now, for the person that told me that voting doesn't matter, I would ask you this. Let me ask this question. If voting really doesn't matter, why do people go to such great lengths to prevent others from doing something that doesn't even matter? Why were literacy tests created? Some of us may not know our history, may not understand. And those of us that do, maybe it's time for us to explain it to the next generation, because obviously they don't understand what they are taking for granted, an opportunity that they are taking for granted, something that takes literally a few minutes to do. Few minutes of your day and your time to go register to vote and then go vote. They obviously don't understand. Literacy tests were created to prevent folks from voting. Poll taxes were imposed to prevent people from voting. People were intimidated and still are intimidated at polling places to prevent folks from voting. States are constantly fighting over redistricting. Sound familiar? Just a few weeks ago, was it last week or week before last? The governor of our state here in Mississippi announced that he would hold a special session to redraw the maps. Redraw the maps. But voting doesn't matter. Remember? Why? Why hold a whole session that's costing taxpayers dollars for these folks to meet to redraw districting maps? Why are some lawmakers working to restrict early voting for something that does not matter? And why are the courts flooded with election lawsuits? You know, folks talking about stolen elections that are arguing all the way up to the Supreme Court. If voting does not matter, nobody would be working that hard to control it if it really didn't matter. Need you to think about that. Anything that someone works so hard to suppress obviously is very powerful. We don't understand the power that we hold in our own hands. You know, Dr. Williams often talks about foundational things. Now, our ancestors may not have had a lot of money and, great size estates to leave behind, but they did leave us some foundational things. They left some foundational things behind for us. We have an opportunity to build on those foundations that have already been laid for us, but many of us are choosing not to do that. We choose not to do that. Every time we don't show up at the polls. Now, again, if you're just tuning in this morning, I need you to come on in the room. I need to acknowledge, I'm going to pause for a minute to acknowledge those of you that have tuned in to the live broadcast here on WMPR 90.1 FM. Those of you that are joining me by Facebook as well as YouTube, I see you, I acknowledge you, and I appreciate you being a part of this conversation. And I need you to go ahead and just let us know what your thoughts are. Drop it in the chat. How are you feeling about this? Because Dr. Williams is very concerned about the level of voter apathy among Black folks, among us. Voter apathy. I could understand it if it was people that have always had the right and the opportunity and the freedom and the privilege to vote if they didn't care. But I don't quite understand us having such an apathetic point of view when it comes to this conversation of voting. I don't understand that. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter, because maybe you have a different perspective, and I'm open to various perspectives on this conversation. I'm open to it. Want to hear it because I want to understand. I don't. I don't. The right to vote was purchased literally with blood. Need you to let that sink in. Maybe it was not your ancestors. Maybe it was never anybody related to you. So maybe that's why it doesn't matter. Maybe you can't relate. Maybe your teacher, your history teacher, did not teach this part when you were sitting in your classrooms. And maybe that's why it doesn't matter. Maybe this is the part that, we have been conditioned to believe that some stuff is just made up. It just didn't really happen. Or it wasn't that bad. I've heard that said. It wasn't that bad. Maybe we have bought into that. But the right to vote was literally purchased with blood. And I want to challenge us to think, if you gave your life for something or for someone and they cared or valued that sacrifice so little, how would you feel? Let's just say if you were willing to do that. Because many of us are not, we ain't found one thing yet that we're willing to die for. Not one thing that we are willing to die for. But I thank God for those who came before us that were willing to lay down their lives for us to sit back and be apathetic. Say their names. Say them. Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, John Lewis, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Jimmy Lee Jackson. If none of these sound familiar, if you don't know who they are, go look them up. Google it, as the young folks say. Just Google them. Many, many others. I could go on and on and on, and I got a lot more listed, but we're not going to go there. But there's a few right here in Mississippi. If you don't know these names, go Google them. I challenge you. Vernon Damer, down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Forest County. Google it. Matt Charles Parker, Herbert Lee, Emmett Till. Google them. Say their names. And then say it doesn't matter. Go find a relative, a descendant. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to sit at the table with the widow of Mr. Vernon Damer, his family, at an event where the Evers family was being recognized. Wonder how they would feel if you said to them that their loved one's sacrifice doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. These people I just named, these are not abstract figures in a history book. These were real people with real families, people who were mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, teachers and preachers, neighbors and friends. They were ordinary people who believed their lives could help secure a better future. How dare we? How dare we? How dare we not recognize, not appreciate that sacrifice? So my question, as I say, I did not respond to the person who was so abrupt and very rude in my opinion, but yet she walked in her truth. She stated her honesty about how she feels. My question to her, though, is how do you think the families of these individuals feel? The many nights that their mothers and fathers were away from home because they were out advocating. They were out advocating. They were out demonstrating. They were out mobilizing, organizing for us to have a right, a privilege, and then sit back and be so apathetic about it? How do they feel? How would they feel? How would you feel? That's my question. How would you feel? I'm looking at the clock and we're coming up on the half-hour mark, and Dr. Williams is just getting started, and Lord knows, y'all, I'm struggling this morning. I'm dealing with this upper respiratory stuff, but I got a little warm coffee over here, so I'm going to take a sip while Mr. Armstrong takes us into that commercial break, and we're going to be right back here on the other side. We got to walk this thing out, y'all, because it's getting serious around here. So we got to walk it out. We got to talk it out. But most of all, we got to get up and do something. All right, Mr. Armstrong, I'm going to throw it to you.
Mississippi, we're open 6:30 a.m. until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We serve breakfast, lunch, and a snack. Our teaching curriculum is ABECA, one of the best, serving children 6 weeks to 5 years old in our preschool. Let's not forget about our after-school care, serving children 6 years to 12 years old. Your search is over for childcare. It stops right here because you found Unity Learning Center. For more info, it's 601-922-6003. That's 601-922-6003. And ask for Mrs. Armstrong. WFBR is proud to have Unity Learning Center as an underwriter.
All right. Welcome. If you're just tuning in this morning, come on in the room. You have tuned in to Soul Talks Money and More, the talk show that starts the week. We start the conversation. We challenge you to start your week thinking about some things. And this morning, we are thinking about voter apathy, particularly in the Black community, and what it is costing us, what it has cost us, and what it is currently costing us. Dr. Williams doesn't understand it. I'm struggling. I'm trying to figure out when, where, and why. How did our community become so apathetic when we have lost so much? History shows us that there has been great sacrifice for us to have this thing called the right to vote. And for many of us, it appears that it really does not matter to us to be a participant in this process of determining those who will represent us, those who will make decisions on our behalf. There have been many, and if you didn't hear us on the first half of the show, we went through a litany of names, many of which sound very familiar. And I think part of the reason why, especially with our younger generation, that we cannot relate, they cannot relate to what the problem is because if you've had something, how do we say that adage that says you never miss your water until the well runs dry? Those that have had an opportunity, you've always known what it feels like to walk through the front door, to drink out of any water fountain you want to drink out of, to not have to sit at the back of the bus. You can sit anywhere on the bus you want to sit, not have to go through the back door. Many folks don't know anything about that because you didn't live through that. And if I'm being 100% with you, as the kids say, if I'm being 100, honestly, Dr. Williams can't relate to that. I came in the 70s during the era of, as they say, the Black Power, that era. So I can't really relate to any of that. But I know about it because I was taught about it. It started in my home. My family talked about it. I saw the struggle through their eyes. And for many of us, so many generations, I guess, have passed, the conversation has not been held. The information has not been passed on. And it's amazing. You know, this stuff really is, I say this all the time, there ain't nothing happening to us right now that has never happened. It's biblical. Go look it up. Anytime you have a group of people who do not remember their history, who do not pass forward their history, where you came from, what you've been through, if you don't pass that on to your children, eventually they're going to forget about it. And it's going to be as if it never happened. And I'm convinced that is why many of the younger folks don't care. They don't know. They've not been taught. They have not been over to Selma, Alabama, to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Dr. Williams has been there more than once. I was just there last year, as a matter of fact. What are you talking about, Dr. Williams, the Edmund Pettus Bridge? What's the significance of that? Well, I'm glad you asked. Go Google it. March the 7th, 1965. Approximately 600 peaceful protesters attempted to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. They were met by state troopers who were wielding clubs and tear gas. Now, remember I said these were peaceful protesters. These were not the Black Panthers. These were not folks carrying, AK-47s. These were not folks armed in any way. They were peacefully protesting, something they had the right to do. But yet, those folks were met with clubs and tear gas. And that day, March the 7th, 1965, became known as Bloody Sunday. So when I say the name John Lewis, if you don't know who I'm talking about, John Lewis went on to become a congressman. He recently passed a couple of years ago. And Congressman Lewis was actually on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on March the 7th, 1965. Nearly lost his life because he was beaten so bad. And he was a young guy at that time, young guy at that time. Not only was Congressman Lewis beaten, there were many beaten. There's a whole monument. If you get to the other side of the bridge, there's a whole section where they have monuments that they have established. You can read the history of those that were beaten and lost their lives. Many people were beaten, nearly died, but they kept marching. They kept marching. Why? Because they wanted something better for us. They dreamed of something better. They had something that many of us lack, obviously. They had courage that helped lead to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They laid the foundation. It was those folks. It wasn't us. Fast forward a couple of generations, that was 1965. Here we are in 2026, and we got folks talking about it doesn't matter. Your vote doesn't count. Don't come at me with that stuff, voting stuff. I don't want to hear nothing about that. But in 1965, March the 7th, as a matter of fact, 600 brave souls, courageous souls, dared to just peacefully walk across a bridge. And they met a lot of resistance, but they kept on walking, kept on walking. I'm convinced that they crossed the bridge so that we could cross into the voting booth. They didn't cross that bridge for us to sit at home, for us to turn a blind eye, for us not to participate in the process. They crossed a bridge so that we could cross into the voting booth. Have we lost our appreciation for the sacrifice? Have we really? I think one of the greatest failures in our community is that our ancestors fought to ensure that we had the right to vote. But somewhere along the way, we failed to pass down the significance of that right. We failed. We failed. We inherited the privilege, but not always the perspective. We know the names, but do we honor their sacrifice? We know their names, but do we actually really honor? Do we think about it? Do we think about the sacrifice? I'm sitting here now as I sit in the studio here at WMPR 90.1 FM. I look around the walls and I happen to look over to my left and I see a picture of Mr. Medgar Evers at a water fountain. And I can't read the caption on it from where I'm sitting, but it says the week's best photos. And I believe it's probably from where I'm sitting, I think it's a picture of him drinking out of a whites only fountain. I think that's part of the problem. We have lost sight of the sacrifice. And honestly, you guys, I say us because we have not done a good job of passing down our history to our children. Oh, we sit back and we complain about them taking the history books out of the libraries and them taking our stories out of the history books. But my question is, what have we done? Have we done enough to pass on our own story? After all, it's called his story, history. Why do we dare sit back and allow someone else to tell our story? Nobody can tell your story like you can. And I think that it's the ultimate failure. That while our ancestors fought to ensure that we had the right to vote, we failed to fully pass down the significance of that right. We failed. We inherited the right, but too many of us never inherited the reverence. We didn't inherit that. And so it's easy for our Gen Zs and our millennials to tell us, my vote doesn't count. Your vote doesn't count. I'm not fooling with that mess. I'm not going out there. It's easy for many of them to drive past the polls on election day and turn their heads because they don't understand the significance. I got to make a shift here because I need you to understand some things. And I know we are in the process with this recent Supreme Court decision. Many of us are organizing and mobilizing, and, we're planning protests to make our discontent known about things that are going on. And I got to tell you, I understand protests, and I look back in my history, our history, I'll say, and I see many protests that have occurred. And I'm wondering, our people have always known how to organize. We have boycotted, we've marched, we've protested, registered voters, filled the streets. March on Washington, hundreds of thousands of people, Million Man March, and the recent No Kings protests, hundreds of thousands and thousands of people. And I'm not here to tell you that these moments did not matter. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Marches, though, make headlines. Votes make history. I'm going to say it again because somebody needs to hear that. Marches make headlines. Votes make history. Marches, they inspire, they educate, they even unite. But protests alone do not change election results. You can register, you can protest, you can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, if you don't exercise that right to vote, it's all for naught. Protests alone don't change election results. Marches create visibility. Votes create policy. Marches may move hearts, but votes move laws. Don't lose that. Somebody better grab that. Marches may move hearts. Votes move laws. So when I look around, as I say, I'm very concerned about what I see in terms of Black voter apathy. And my question becomes, is there any hope for our community? I am very concerned. And I say that with all sincerity, you guys. I really, really do. It troubles my spirit when I see what is being done to us. But equally as troubling is what we are doing to ourselves. See, you can't look at one side and not acknowledge the other. And that's part of the problem. We got to call a spade, and I'm here to call it what it is. We are self-destructing. We are self-destructing. This is a question that many of us wrestle with. Between violence, division, mistrust, lack of support, financial instability, and voter apathy, is there any hope? Any hope for us at all? Well, I'm like Jesse. I'm going to keep hope alive this morning. I'm going to say yes, there is hope. But hope is not passive. Hope requires participation. Hope requires ownership. Hope requires us to show up. Hope is not a feeling. Hope is a decision to participate. I remember when President Obama was elected, and I think his campaign slogan was, "Yes, we can." Yes, we can, and yes, we did. But we didn't do that simply because people talked about it. We didn't do that simply because people registered to vote. We did that because people exercised their right to vote. So that's my challenge to us, to think about what will it take to motivate those who are already registered to vote to actually go vote? What will it take to get them motivated to get up and go vote? I think that needs to be a part of the broader conversation. I understand organization. I understand mobilization. But I go back to the opportunity that we had right here in this red state called Mississippi to elect the first Black governor of this state. He didn't lose because folks were not registered to vote. He lost because those that were registered to vote, many of them chose not to participate in the process. What is it going to take these folks that are already registered to get up and go to the polls and vote? Will it take better education, stronger leadership, more accountability, civic mentoring, family conversations? Some of us just need to ask Folks in our household or that come through the house. Church engagement. A lot of what happened during civil rights happened because our churches were engaged. What are we talking about? Come on, pastors. Come on, deacons. Come on, sisters, mothers. What are we talking about? Are we encouraging? And again, for those that tuned in on the backside, I am not advocating. I am not in any way trying to influence who people vote for. That is between you and your God. I'm not doing that. But what I am saying is when you don't participate in the process, you do not have the right to open your mouth and say one doggone thing. Not one thing about the way things are. You just accept it. Whatever you get is what you get. So what is it going to take? Better education, stronger leadership, more accountability, civic mentoring, family conversations, church engagement. Well, I dare say it's going to take probably all of the above, all of that. But ultimately, it starts with each of us deciding that our voice does matter. Now, you can choose to say your voice doesn't matter, but I don't choose to say that. Mine matters. Mine matters just as much as the next person's voice matters. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm a taxpaying citizen, just like the next man. And in fact, in many of our cases, we pay more taxes. Far more than many of these other folks pay. Because you know why? I'm going to go ahead and say it. I stuck my toe in the water, so I'm going to go ahead and say it because every other community out there pimps our community. Yes, they do. Everybody else has figured out that we as a community are consumers. So they all pimping us. So yeah, we should have something to say about how we are treated, who's representing us, what businesses are allowed to come into our neighborhoods, who's buying, who's doing this, who's doing that. We should have a say. We should want to have a say. And if you don't, shame on you. Shame on you. Again, got to be crystal clear. This message is not about telling you who to vote for, what party to join, which ideology to embrace. This message is about understanding the power of participation. Because whether you vote Democratic, Republican, Independent, or write your cousin Pookie's name in, the point is you need to be voting. Participate in the process, if for no other reason, but because you understand the sacrifice that people have made for you to have that privilege. And when we truly, truly understand the value of our vote, we can move forward and get some things done. If we truly understood the power that lies in our vote, we get nothing because we don't require nothing. We go vote for folks and then we don't hold them accountable. We don't ask them for anything and we don't hold them accountable for anything. Because just like we vote them in, we can vote them out. But we get what we ask for. I told you this stuff is biblical. You have not because you ask not. You ain't asking for nothing. We as a community, what have we asked for? What are we asking our politicians for? We just had a session here, state legislative session here in the state of Mississippi. What was the Black folks' agenda? What did we ask them folks for while they was organized up there at the Capitol? We didn't ask for a darn thing, and we not getting a darn thing. Don't wonder why. We ain't asking for nothing. I digress. Let me come on back. Again, this is not about party lordy. It's about community responsibility. That's what Dr. Williams is here to talk about this morning. What good is a key if you refuse to use it? What good is it? Our ancestors were beaten, jailed, humiliated, and murdered so that we could hold in our hands one of the most powerful tools in a democracy, the right to vote. Yet today, too many of us proudly register to vote, but we never show up to cast a ballot. We never. You know, we're in the midst of graduation season, and I actually had an opportunity last night to be with high school graduates and help the family celebrate that great accomplishment of completing the first 12 years of her education. And my question and my challenge to all of our parents, in all your giving, the gifts, you know, we go above and beyond. We give the elaborate parties and celebrations and this, that, and the other. Take that 18-year-old downtown and go ahead and register them to vote. Get them registered to vote. Talk to them, educate them on the importance of participating in the process. And once you get them registered to vote, please ensure that they show up at their polling places on election day. That's something that we can give them. That's part of that legacy Dr. Williams talks about that doesn't even involve money. There's some things we need to be leaving behind for our children, you know, that don't have a money value placed on them. And that's why I am convinced that some of these young people are so apathetic, and some of the old ones too, because ain't nobody ever laid nothing in them, placed nothing in their spirit about why it is so important to be a part of the process. Too many of us proudly register to vote, but we never show up to cast a ballot. We march. There'll be a lot of folks marching this week. A lot of folks protesting. A lot of folks will have those phones out, filming, posting on social media, hashtagging, and complaining. But when election day arrives in November, too many polling places in our communities are quieter than church on a Tuesday afternoon. Too many. So the question we must ask ourselves is this: did our ancestors sacrifice for our right to vote only for us to treat that right like it doesn't matter? Now, in closing, I'll say this to everyone who says voting doesn't matter. I want you to take a walk back in time with me. Need you to go to Selma, Alabama. It's a short drive. Let's go on over to Selma, Alabama. And I want you to stand at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I've been there a few times. And I want you to look into the eyes of those brave men and women who were beaten for daring to demand a voice. I need you to tell John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, voting doesn't matter. I need you to tell Fannie Lou Hamer, voting doesn't matter. I need you to tell Medgar Evers, voting does not matter. Can you please just tell the families of James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner that voting doesn't matter? And then I want you to tell yourself that the sacrifices of generations before us were in vain. Now, I personally, I don't believe they were. And I don't believe your vote is meaningless. Your vote is your voice, your receipt, and your responsibility. Now, if you registered, I need you to make a plan. Don't just register, make a plan to actually vote. If you know someone who is discouraged, encourage them. If you have children and grandchildren, teach them. It is our responsibility. Don't wait for the teachers to do it. Many of them don't know themselves. We waiting for folks to do something and they don't know how to do it. We need to teach them why it matters. Do not let the sacrifices of our ancestors become stories that we commemorate, but principles that we ignore. History is watching us. It's watching us, you guys. And future generations are depending on us. Now, with that being said, again, I thank you for tuning in this morning, whether you're joining me by radio, Facebook, or YouTube. And if you were not able to view the entire broadcast, don't worry. We posted on our YouTube page at I Am So Noted. That's IAMSEWNOTED over on YouTube. So go back and review this, share this broadcast, you guys. If I said anything that moved your heart, touched your spirit, please share this, because you know, history has shown us, the numbers show us, our folks are not, they're not participating in the process. We are registered. We just not voting. Before I leave, and I got to get out of here because I see Mr. Hart over there and he probably giving me the side eye, but I got to give a quick shout out to our girl, Rita Brent, Mississippi's own, on her recent Emmy win. We are so excited and happy for Rita and the great things that she's doing. You got that Emmy, girl. You are on your way to being that EGOT. You just got 3 more to go. Keep going, keep going, keep going. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go over to social media, Google it. You'll find out, and give Rita some love, you guys. So often we fail to do that. When people in our communities are doing great things, we don't give them the praise, the recognition, and the honor that they deserve. So please, please, please go over to her page, send her some love, and congratulate her on her recent Emmy win. Thank you so much for tuning in to So Talks Money and More. I am your host, Dr. Sabrina Edmon Williams, educator, author, and investor, opening minds and closing contracts. I am so noted. It's been good to be here with you. Peace.